It was just before 7:15 in the morning last Tuesday, 6 days ago, that a tank filled with 900 gallons of something called white liqueur that is used in the paper making process to kind of break down pulp. Some sort of catastrophic failure. All last week, we were calling it an implosion, as was everybody else. But now we've learned that it was most likely some kind of catastrophic or structural failure. I spoke briefly this morning with a couple of lawmakers, Representative Jim Walsh and Senator Jeff Wilson. That's his district in Longview. He's quite familiar with the plant itself, that Nippon facility. And he said, yeah, I don't think we can call it an implosion anymore. This is looking more like some sort of structural, catastrophic structural failure. But we had 11 workers killed and 7 more at that facility that suffered burns and inhalation injuries, including a firefighter. There are still 3 people hospitalized, but we now have the names of those who lost their lives. And you can see that their ages range from some in their 20s to those in their upper 50s. So much life lost. And we again, still really don't know what happened, only that this is, in fact, Washington State's deadliest industrial disaster since 1930. And that was when 17 workers died in a blast in Carbonado at a mine that was owned by the Pacific Coast Coal Company. So many lives lost. That community still reeling from this. And Labor and Industries is looking into any past safety violations. We've heard some instances where they were investigating a couple things, nothing related to this tank that failed. No other safety issues specifically related to that, although we have heard from a law firm in Seattle that is representing at least one of the victims' families, a woman who says that her husband, who was killed, had raised some safety concerns and that had not been addressed. So, of course, there's going to be a lot more coming on that. But meantime, we've got ecology, the State Department of Ecology, and local water managers that have been monitoring releases since that disaster 6 days ago. Main concerns, of course, about the drinking water and the discharges. Did they get so far as to the Columbia River? Because that drainage, that ditch drainage system in Longview, just adjacent even where the mill is located, uh, some of that runoff did certainly reach that drainage system. But I'm told by Ecology and their most recent release that went out on Sunday that the pH levels at this point are pretty normal. They're doing a lot of flushing of the drainage system and checking pH levels constantly. And the drinking water, they say there are no issues at this point, but we do have some dead fish. So I did have a conversation this morning. I'm going to share just a brief clip from Steve Hobner. He's the stormwater manager for the city of Longview. Um, he said, because asked him specifically, I said, "How do you prepare for something like this? You know, stormwater. You have a giant storm, and there's runoff, and you've got your drainage system can't keep up, and that sort of a thing. But how do you prepare for something like this?" And he said, basically, this is not something we had ever anticipated.
This is a pretty large scale catastrophic failure that I think most communities would not anticipate. We do have a, wellhead protection program in the city. We do, obviously, I'm the stormwater manager for the city. We do anticipate small scale spills, but nothing of this magnitude.
Now, as of today, we have about 2,000 dead fish that have been collected from the ditch systems in locations that are adjacent right to the incident response area and in West Longview. They've collected carp, they've collected catfish, sunfish, bass, and a single, they say, hatchery raised coho salmon. That's been a big concern. But again, the pH levels in the Columbia River are as they were before. They don't believe any of this toxic chemical actually has reached the river, although the flushing process will continue. They expect to collect a lot more dead fish in the days ahead. And they've said that anybody who sees a dead fish or other wildlife impacts that they believe to be connected to this chemical disaster, They don't want you to collect it and then tell them about it. What they want you to do is if you see it, to take a photograph, obviously note the exact location as much as you can, and then, call the Fish and Wildlife number, which is 1-800-22-BIRDS. So 1-800-22-BIRDS, BIRDS. They don't want anyone touching any of this, of course. Those animals were exposed to these noxious, chemicals.